Hi there. So I have a question for you, Mama. When is the last time you had a goal conversation with your partner? I know. If your life is anything like mine, you're like, what now? I don't even know what we're having for dinner tonight. I feel that. I feel that in my soul. I've got you. I was reflecting on Valentine's Day coming up and was thinking about how my husband and I, when we were first dating, when we first got married, we would spend like literally hours sort of daydreaming about what we wanted our dream life to look like someday. We talked about the kind of house we wanted to have and the kind of money we wanted to make and the kind of lifestyle we wanted to have, what our kids would be like. Maybe not everyone did that, but it was just sort of a fun fantasy that we would discuss on long car rides or, hikes in the woods or whatever. So since kids have come on the scene, those conversations have definitely been fewer and way more far between than I care to admit. So I decided to sort of focus this week on encouraging couples to have goals conversations and sort of force yourself to think about that big picture. Since we're so stuck in the day to day, it's fun to daydream. It's fun to start to design that dream life. And that's my job. That's what I help busy moms to do. And starting that with a conversation with your partner is just awesome. And you won't regret the time that you spent having these conversations. So just a little disclaimer before we get into it. Obviously, every relationship is different. These goal conversations work well for my husband and I. I mean, we maybe have them like once or twice a year. If nothing like substantial is going on. There have definitely been seasons of life where like big changes have been happening, like during the pandemic when it was like, oh, hey, I think I'm going to quit my teaching job. Like we had more goal conversations then than we necessarily do now while things are a little more stable. So keep that in mind. All relationships are different. If this is not something that makes sense in your relationship, then you can skip on ahead. But if it is or could be helpful or inspirational to you and your relationship, I hope you'll stick around to hear some of the ideas I have for your conversation. So I thought I would share with you some conversation starters just to sort of get you thinking about what this conversation could look like. Some questions that you may want to cover are, where do you picture us being at the end of 2023? When I asked my husband this question, this is me, guys. We set a timer and we literally each wrote independent lists of what we want our life to look like at the end of this year. And then we shared them with each other. It took 10 minutes. It was fun. It was interesting. It was more challenging than you would think because at this stage of life, like we have a lot of the things that, 20-year-old version of us were sort of daydreaming about: the house, the kids, the dogs, all those things. So it was a fun little exercise to sort of push ourselves. When you're doing a list like that, I really encourage you to set a timer because I find the best ideas come after the initial rush. So you get all those, sort of top of mind ideas out first, and then you sort of see what happens later. And those tend to be the more outside the box ideas. So don't be afraid to do that as part of this conversation. Another question would be, what do we want to have done as a family by the end of this year? What do you want our relationship to look like by the end of this year? Are there any health and wellness goals that I can support you with? Are there any projects around the house that you want to work on this year? That's always a loaded one. How are we going to prioritize our relationship this year? Are there any financial goals that we want to talk about, either short-term or long-term? Are there any just general goals that I can support you with this year? That's always a great conversation, and one that we don't always think to have, but is so, so important to support your partner. And this question is kind of a fun question. What word do you want to use to describe our parenting this year? Again, a lot of times in the day-to-day, it's hard to think those big picture thoughts. So if you're able to sort of remove yourself for this goal conversation, those could be a great place to start, those conversation starters. So here's my advice for having this conversation. The first is to kind of give your partner a heads up that you want to have it and see their reaction. I'm not gonna lie to you, my husband doesn't get like super excited about these conversations, but I'll, tell him that I am interested in discussing some of these things, and that way he knows like it's coming. And I don't think he does much prep work on his end, but he at least isn't caught off guard when we bring it up. I also like to make it a time when we're away from our house and from our kids and our responsibilities. This year in January, we had this conversation and we went to just a local restaurant, made it a bit of a date, and just had a good conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be this like formal agenda, like kind of thing. I think the questions are a good place to start and to get the conversation going. I know some of those areas like just fall on their face some years, and then other years it's like all you talk about, like the house projects or the financial goals or health and wellness. So just know that seasons of life, it's going to ebb and flow. And I would say just try, if you can, which I know we can't always do this, but try to have a babysitter happening, and maybe have some time to do something fun afterwards. It's a heavy conversation a lot of the time, even if you're not talking about like super serious things. It's a lot. So it's also nice at the end of the conversation to be able to be like, all right, now let's go throw some axes, or let's go on a hike, or something like that, just to sort of separate from the conversation, give yourself some perspective. And you'd be surprised, you'll probably come back to it in a few weeks once some of those ideas have settled a little bit. So I definitely encourage you to plan an activity afterwards to help you sort of decompress and help you transition home. It's also hard to like race into the house with screaming kids once you've had that nice conversation about your goals. So I'm super curious, do you have goal conversations with your partner? Feel free to comment below if you do. If you like this video, please help other busy moms find me by liking the video, and also you can hit the red subscribe button below to see more videos like this from me. All right, mama, keep growing. Don't forget, little eyes are watching. Have a good day.